Hello and welcome. I'm Melinda Akinlami. Tonight, Senate summons Inspector General of Police to explain the killings in Benue State as President Muhammadu Buhari writes to lawmakers on the steps taken to end the crisis. Ruling All Progressive Congress pledges to ensure ethnic harmony in Nigeria as it presents its report to the public in Abuja. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo's Coalition for Nigeria launched in Abuja group vows to reclaim the country from injustice, poverty and insecurity. And Kenyan government investigates opposition candidate Raila Odinga's unofficial inauguration, says several television stations to remain shut over plan to broadcast the event.
On business news tonight, oil output from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries rises in January on higher supply from Nigeria and Saudi Arabia.
On sports news, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang joins Arsenal from Borussia Dortmund for a club record fee of £60 million.
And from Abuja, federal government explains fuel pricing mechanism, insists subsidies not in the mix.
We begin with the continued violence and killings in Benue State, which has spurred the Senate to summon the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, to explain what's being done to stop the attacks. The Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, had earlier read a letter from President Muhammadu Buhari explaining the steps taken after the January attacks to address the situation. The lawmakers had earlier given the police boss 2 weeks to bring the situation in the state under control.
The attacks in Benue State by suspected herdsmen has refused to stop, and the Senate is not leaving the matter to lie low.
Leader of the Senate.
Federal lawmakers had earlier issued a 14-day ultimatum to the Inspector General of Police to investigate the attack in Benue, while asking the executive to take steps to end the killings. However, in a letter to the Senate President, President Buhari disagreed with the lawmakers that nothing has been done so far.
To infer, therefore, that nothing has been done is incorrect. The police are strenuously working to apprehend the rest of the culprits of these heartless killings. Furthermore, I have instructed the Inspector General of Police to relocate to Benue State, redeploy forces to the most sensitive areas. The federal government is initiating additional measures to address these and other security challenges.
But the Senate would not allow the matter rest, as a federal lawmaker raised a point of order, insisting that the Inspector General of Police is yet to act on the resolution of the upper legislative chamber, which compels the police chief to explain why nobody is being prosecuted for the killings.
The Senate clearly resolved that the Inspector General of Police be given 2 weeks within which to identify and arrest all those who perpetrated the killings in Benue. This resolution was passed and was transmitted to the Inspector General of Police, but to the best of my knowledge, information and belief, no arrests have been made and no information has been brought to the Senate concerning the resolution that was passed to the Inspector General of Police.
I think the whole integrity of the institution on issues as important as this must be taken seriously. I think the Senate Committee on Police and Intelligence should summon the IG to come before it by tomorrow to be able to make an explanation to also where we are on these 2 weeks ultimatum. And those two committees should report to us by Tuesday the exact situation or where we are.
Lawmakers also raised the issue of security challenges in Zamfara and Niger states. However, the Senate President assured them that the situation will be addressed at the forthcoming National Security Summit initiated by the National Assembly.
Meanwhile, a clash in Boko Central Motor Park in Benue State today left 7 people dead. In a press statement, the Benue State Police Command explains that initial findings revealed that the victims were passengers in a commercial vehicle going to Okene in Kogi State from Jalingo in Taraba State, but were attacked. by some angry youths. Now, both the state governor, Samuel Otom, and the police commissioner, Fatai Owoshoni, have already visited the scene with a promise that those found culpable will be brought to justice. But the state government is not taking any chances. It has imposed a dusk till dawn curfew in Boko Town from today till further notice. Since the beginning of 2018, hundreds have been killed across the country through acts of violence connected to land disputes, the most prominent being the farmers and herdsmen clashes. The alarming trend has raised questions on what the security agencies are doing to contain the problem. In this next report, our correspondent, Oluwa Shonibare, explains the violence that is threatening the stability of the nation.
The heat from the attack in Benue State, which left one person dead, a 5-year-old boy and an adult male receiving treatment for gunshot wounds, was yet to die down when the news of the abduction of 2 herdsmen and the killing of 73 cows on a farm in Nasarawa State broke. And as feared, a reprisal has followed, worsening an already dire situation. The problem in Nigeria today is such that although dialogue is considered always the better way, revenge in the form of violence seems to be the only option available to the people as a readily available means of settling disputes in the absence of adequate and timely state intervention. The end result? Lives and property swept away by the torrent of brutality. Then there are panels of inquiry set up whenever violence occurs, which more often than not make recommendations that end up on the shelves.
We also make inputs.
Accusations of inaction and ineptitude have also dogged the process of solving the crises. All this hiccup leave the aggrieved parties with little option than to take laws into their hands. And the cycle continues. So what needs to be done to ensure people live in peace with one another? Could it be an increase in the number of security agents or a committed effort to see that the recommendations raised by committees are followed? Whatever it is, those who can make this happen must realize that the longer the violence goes on, the more difficult it will be to bring the people together. And when people take matters into their own hands, it only ends up in more violence, destruction, and a race to survive. Oluwa Shonibare, Channels Television News.
Now let's get more perspective on this disturbing issue, and I'm now being joined by a lecturer in sociology from the University of Lagos, Dr. Augustine Agugwa. You're welcome to the news at 10.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Now, promises have been made, threats issued, but yet the killings still continue, not just in Benue State, but in other parts of the country. Now, how difficult is it to bring this matter to an end from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, it has to do with the state of the nation, because it borders more on what you might regard as a political way from point of view of leadership. And the issue principally is more of political than what you might look at as being personal. Because sincerely speaking, the most important thing for any set of human beings or group of citizens in any given nation, besides what you might regard as their physiological needs, what to eat, what to drink, and what to breathe, the next thing was on security. And principally, this government of the day came on the threshold of providing security for the people as it has to do with the menace of Boko Haram of those days. But today, you and I can agree to the fact that what we are facing is more menacing, more threatening, and more widespread than the threat of Boko Haram of yesteryears. And principally speaking, from point of view of what people might really feel, how do we really get out of this situation? What can be done? I still feel that the onus of responsibility rests on the government. If they have enough will, if they have the determination, if they have the focus, if they have the interest of the people at heart, I sincerely believe that this situation can be brought under control. A simple analogy of what is happening in Nigeria today, this, alongside that of Ghana, will actually show you that when a government is determined to tackle a situation, it does that decisively.
But Dr. Agugwa, you will agree with me that in the past there were occasions where groups occupied people's territories, battles were won, territories conquered, but now there's a demarcation, everything, the boundaries are aligned. So what we're seeing today, in your view, is it a cause for concern?
It's a big cause for concern. The period or era you're referring to, in political analysis, even in the area of philosophy, we make you to understand that society evolved from its primary stage of existence, where people emphasize brawn and not necessarily brain. When you look at it from point of view of power analysis, we look at it from point of view of societies actually operating on grounds of coercion, domination, and intimidation. Now, as society grows into a more positive, scientific-minded setting, brawn had given way to brain. People don't emphasize force any longer. Even America, with all its arsenal, tries to actually penetrate the heart of persons, not necessarily by displaying its military arsenal. So the issue of conquest of nations by way of coercion and intimidation is no longer in vogue. You convince people, even in interpersonal relationships. In those days, you really need to conquer the person you want to marry, conquer your spouse. You dominate and intimidate somebody into being your wife. Today, it is no longer in vogue. Any person that raises his or her, his hand against the spouse, the person is regarded as a beast. So the issue of conquest of territories, especially in an entity where we are emphasizing nationhood, where people in the past 100 years or over 100 years now are seen, to be cohabiting as nationals in a given nation, we can't be talking about conquest of territories. Who is conquering who? The truth about it is that if, for instance, that aspect of argument is brought to the fore, then I think the next thing we might really fall back to is this issue of what they call a madcap mentality, mutually assured destructive capacity that every part of the nation should actually fall to hands. Why? Because the very entity, as it has to do with the government of the day, entrusted with the monopoly of violence in protecting, not necessarily using violence to intimidate its citizens, but to use it to protect them, is proving to be very incapable. And that is exactly what we are witnessing in Nigeria today. Then it's like, to your thanks, O Israel, people should really fall back on themselves and defend themselves against the menace of what we are seeing.
I pray we don't get to that.
Yeah, that is my sincere prayer too.
Okay, but what should be done at this point to give residents a sense of safety?
Residents' sense of safety. The truth about it is that when we are talking about nationhood, the duty is actually entrusted on the government of the day. And it is the duty of everyone to actually drum it into the ear of the people in charge of governance, that they owe it as a sense of responsibility to ensure people's safety. Because it's when you give people a sense of safety, a sense of security, that is when they explore and exploit their potentials and prove to be very, very useful to the society. Well, where you fail to do this, even in management sciences, when you categorize what you call human needs alongside Maslow's needs hierarchy, what is regarded Maslow's needs hierarchy, they will tell you that secondary needs do not arise in terms of patriotism, in terms of conquering the space, in terms of making breakthroughs in research to help the society grow, that those needs do not arise until primary needs such as food and security are assured. The government of the day is failing Nigerian citizens, and it is the business of the government to rise up to this responsibility. And principally, if they show sanity in their attitude of governance, then we cannot be emphasizing things that borders on brotherliness, sense of comradeship, trying to make people appreciate the act of love, because that is the main thing that actually sustains a society, being your neighbor's keeper, love others as you expect them to love you. Then this actually brings to the fore my feeling as it has to do with the golden rule. Because to tell you the truth, when I watch events as they are occurring across the nation, especially this Benue State incident, it actually draws my mind back to what happened I think that was in 2001.
Definitely, Dr. Agugwa, is really depressing, but we have to leave it at this point. Thank you so much for speaking with us on the news at 10.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And in part 2, after the break, ahead of the 2019 general elections, a new political group, Coalition for Nigeria, formally kicks off activities in Abuja. Join us again.